it on your box or on your panel here. Where this really comes into more convenience on their mirror, if you have the Legend mirror or the M4, another added feature is you're able to see what direction you're going and how fast you're going on the actual mirror. Now this doesn't actually display the same way as the mirror. It's still really nice to have. Along with the switch panel, you will need their Acumen Box. So what the box is, it's the brains. This is where you're gonna connect all your accessories. It's up to 8 different accessories. So in the box, you're gonna get the brains, the harness, where you're gonna plug in all your different accessories into it, your power cord. So this would go from your box onto your battery, and you're gonna get this 10-foot cable. This cable is what would communicate between the box and your panel. You would connect it, and then that's how the panel knows what accessory to power up when you hit turn on or to turn off. Now let's take a look at what tools you will need. You will need some wire cutters. Any brand in particular would work. You don't need to have any particular brand. Some crimpers, whether it's the ratcheting style crimper or just other style crimpers. This is my favorite one to use. You're not only able to crimp, but you can also splice your cables. So this is and you can also cut your cables. So if you have something like this is a snap-on one. If you have something like this, it's very convenient. You can cut, splice, and crimp all with one tool. Now you don't have to have this. You don't have to have this one. If you don't have one that does it all, like I said, you can have your wire cutters, and then there's also wire strippers. There's a couple different, like you can buy some on Amazon, 10-15 bucks, just depending on what you want to use. And then you can pick some crimpers up at your local Home Depot. So Home Depot has this ratchet crimping crimp. You're also gonna need, depending on whether you're gonna be using a heat shrinking connection or not, you're gonna need a lighter. This is my torch. Once we get into the process of installing, you're gonna be able to see where we will need this. If you don't have this, you don't have to have a fancy torch. Again, this is a snap-on butane torch. You can have a cigarette lighter, will do the job, or even a heat gun of some sorts would also do the job. So on the box, there's this harness that we discussed about a little bit earlier about. So on there's where you would connect your 8 different accessories. So there's a couple of different ways to achieve the connection. There's a couple of different splice types or connection joints. You see these common ones. These splice are the typical splice. You see them at AutoZone, Home Depot, and stuff like that. They'll do the job. Now, if you're doing this on the UTV side by side, water does come into the play. So I would highly recommend getting a splicer like these. Once you crimp it, you can apply your heat source, as we discussed earlier, either a lighter or a butane torch, and it will seal it. So water won't go in, and it will prevent from shorting out. Now, having these splices is really convenient to have, but in the UTV world, we're always getting new stuff. So I'm getting new whips, or I'm getting new LED bar, new this, new that. So if you continue using these, the only downside of using this is as you replace your accessory, you would have to continue cutting, and eventually you would run out of wire length. There is a solution to that. You can use your regular, square terminal connectors. They sell, again, Home Depot, AutoZone, or even you can pick some up on Amazon. It just depends where you want to pick them up. But I like to particularly use this. I call these the bullet connector. Actually, they're actually called the bullet connector. So there's a female and male. So what I would do is on my harness, I would put one end, and on my accessory the other end. If I ever decide to replace a accessory, I don't need to worry about cutting it from my harness, because I can just unplug it, and then once I put the new one, put the end it has, and then replug it, and I wouldn't really be messing with the wire length. if you're not gonna be using, if you're not gonna be changing that much, that's not a high concern for you, then I highly recommend these. They're called heat shrink butt connectors. You can pick them up on Amazon. I've seen them at some AutoZones, and I've seen them at some Home Depots. So it really just depends what type of source you want to use to connect to get that connection of your accessories. For this particular project, there's another choice, and this is a choice I'm gonna be using. This is an 8-pin Deutsch connector. So it's basically a fancy version of the butt connectors. What I like in particular about this is the waterproof. It's a nice tight seal once you connect it, and it achieves the same thing as the bullet connectors. So I'm gonna be using this. So now that we went over the different type of connections you can have, let's actually dive in and start connecting. So the basic layout of how it would be outside the car, I would connect the box onto the battery. I always recommend putting the box close to a power source or battery. In Jeeps, you can put them next to the battery. That way you don't need to worry about running a long cable. Then your harness will be connected onto your box, and then your box would be connected onto your digital display panel. So we'll see how to connect this to the battery. It's pretty simple, not too hard. We'll see how to connect this onto the battery once I install it on the car we're going to be using on today. So let's talk about how to install my accessories. So with your box, there's an instruction manual, and in the instruction manual there is going to be a connector diagram. This connector diagram tells you which colors go with your switches or correspond to your accessories. So for example, in here, according to the diagram, purple is for your switch 1, green is for your switch 2, red is for your switch 3, brown is for your switch 4, and so on. So now you're probably wondering, hey, I saw that there's two purple, 2 green, and all the other ones only have 1 wire. So the first 2 channels or the first 2 switches on this panel give you the opportunity to have up to 40 amps of current. So in order to get this 40 amps of current, you would connect these two together onto your accessory, and now that particular accessory has 40 amps. Some LED bars out there do require more amount of amps. The typical amperage that you need for an accessory is 10 to 15 amps. But like I said, there are some LED bars and other accessories that require more. So if that's the case, know that you have the option. Now you don't have to do it. If you know your LED bar only draws 15 amps, then you don't need to connect both of them. For this particular build I'm working out, I know I do need the 40 amps. So we're gonna dive in into it. So I'm gonna take my splicer here, my crimper. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that it's an even cut. That way when we put these two together, one cable is no longer than the other. And it's real simple. So I'm basically just gonna splice the end of the wire. I'm gonna splice the end of the wires, and then I'm gonna connect these two together. Now, because I am using a 8-pin Deutsch connector, I am gonna be using the heat shrink butt connector between these two. I know that I'm always gonna be, if I need to replace, I'm just gonna be replacing the pins out of either end, so I can go ahead and use this for a more permanent connection here. So I basically just slide in my butt connector, use my crimper, crimp. And then now in this storage connector, it is labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Really convenient, so that way you know which is which. So right here, I'm gonna go where it's number 1, and then I'm gonna connect my other end to the other end of my butt connector. So now I have done my first accessory on this end. Now, using a lighter or a butane torch, this is where I'm gonna use it to shrink the butt connector. Like I said, this is for really convenient to have on side-by-sides to prevent any water from going into the connection. Like I said, you don't want any shorting going out. If it shorts, you know, the most immediate problem is you won't have an LED bar. You won't have that accessory. The longer term is if it's not connected properly, you can cause an electrical fire. So I like in the side-by-side world, Can-Am's, razors, Honda Talons, whatever you're using, I like using this water because it seals it nice and sealed. I don't have to worry about water going into there and shorting out. So then I'm gonna repeat the process with my other connectors. So then on the next one, I'm gonna do the same thing. Now I am gonna use other style of my other splicers, just so you see that you're able to use any one in particular. So I am gonna go ahead and splice the cables, connect them together, reach out for my butt connector, slide in, and for these purposes I'm gonna use my my other crimpers. Now the really convenient thing about some of crimpers, it'll tell you the size. So for example, right here it'll tell you if it's 10 to 12, 14 to 16, or 16 to 22, and that's just the thickness of the cable. Now for this butt connector, I know it's rated from 14 to 16, so I'm gonna go to the middle, crimp, go onto my other connector, go for number 2, slide in the number 2, crimp, as you saw there, sometimes the crimper not always puts the required pressure. So this is why I like working with this style crimper, because I put the pressure and I know I can feel when it's really locked in there. So now that I kind of backed it up with my other crimper, you don't always have to do it. Just for that particular crimp, it wasn't a full-on seal. Just make sure after you install your things to give it a nice tug to make sure that they're not gonna unplug. So then I'm gonna do the same thing. All right, so welcome back guys. So like I said, I went on and I used my crimper, my splicer, my cutting tools. I cut, spliced, crimped, and I even used my heat source to seal all the butt connectors. So now everything's plugged in. Now I can take this and plug it in onto the accessories on the other end. Now it is this next thing is optional, up to you. I personally, I'm an aesthetics guy, so I wouldn't want my car to show all these. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna use Acumen provides you with in the box there was electric tape. So I'm gonna use an electric tape to cover it up to look nice and neat, and then I also use the automotive tape is what some people call it. But it's actually high temperature tape, so it can look nice and neat. It'll look like a professional harness, and it would also provide if you're if this is close to a heat source or anything, it would provide an additional protection. So I am gonna go ahead and jump out a little bit. apply it, and I'll be right back with you guys. So for this particular build, I have already covered all the connectors and wires into one single bundle here. Now, if you decided to go with bullet connectors, this step will be done once you actually connect all your accessories. Basically, what you're gonna do is connect your accessories. They're gonna be nice and heat shrink, water sealed, and everything. And then you would connect it onto the harness that you already have on your vehicle. For this build, like I said, I'm using a Deutsch connector, so it's really convenient that it allows me to do this so that I don't have to do it on the car. Well, I'm gonna have to do it on the car, but on the other end. So once I do it on both ends, I'm gonna be able to plug in my connectors and power my accessories. So if you just use the electric tape that is provided in your box, this is how it would look. Nice and concealed. The two cables that are extra, this is going to be your ground. So this is what's going to be connected to your negative battery or ground any point on the chassis, as long as it's good ground. And this is for the data. So this would be connected onto your panel once your panel is mounted. So like I said, I like using high temperature tape. So I'm gonna jump back out and put the high temperature tape and show you guys the final results, and then I'll be right back. All right, guys, so here is the outcome with the high temperature tape. Like I say, it looks nice and neat. It looks like the harness of typically come with your cars. It's just a very nice and neat and sealed job. Like I said, if you're in the UTV world, on the Can-Ams and Razors and whatnot, you do go into water and all this stuff, and water could be a potential, but once you have this layer of protection, you do have the heat shrink butt connectors that seals the cable, and then putting all your cables with electric tape and now the high temperature tape provides extra layers to prevent water, debris, or anything from the sort to go into your connector and provide possibly shorting out. So now next I am gonna jump onto the car. So the location of this, let's talk about the location of your box. Earlier I said you want it near a power source on a Can-Am. You can put it right on top of your battery tray. You know, you can it's plastic, so you can bolt it down onto there, and then connect your power cord, which for this end I can do it right here. So it basically comes, it's a 14 millimeter screw here, a bolt. I'm gonna put in my sometimes this is loose, so I like to tighten this first, so that way when I tighten my power cable, it doesn't feel loose, so it's nice and tight. I'm gonna put my power cord, get my bolts bolted in. Of course, I would use my my 14 millimeter to get it nice and tight, and then put this cap, slide this cap in. Keep in mind, I didn't use my 14 millimeter for the purpose of the video, but I am gonna go ahead and tighten this once I mount this onto the car. And then this end goes onto your battery. Like I said, on the Can-Am, sometimes you can put it right on top of where your battery is. It really, as you know, anywhere where you can have close to battery. This cable is not too long, and you don't want to have too long cables of this. So on the Razors, some Razors, if you have 2021s and 2020s, some Razors on the front hood have a place where you can mount it, or underneath your seat straight to the battery. It just, again, the mounting location just depends on what particular vehicle you're working with. On the Jeeps, I will recommend to put this right near your battery. There's a plastic tray, and that plastic tray is actually what holds your battery. You're able to bolt this onto there. It's away from the engine, so not too much heat would be generated, and this cord is not, this cord would be long enough for you connected to your positive. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump onto the car, mount this, and I'll be right back. Once I mount this, the next step is really to just I call it plug and play. So I would connect my my connector onto my box, and then this would go onto my harness. Now, for time sensitivity, I've already done a harness on my car, so all I have to do is jump onto my car, put this pigtails on there, and then I will be ready for to connect this onto the box. To do a harness, it just depends on you know how you want to do it, what wire you want to use. You know, I use a high temperature wire. So like I said, I have already done a wire harness on the car. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump out of here, and I'm gonna mount this onto the car, and then connect this onto my wiring harness I already have on my vehicle, and then I'll be right back with you guys and show you guys how to connect it to, and then go on to the next step. Hey guys, welcome back. So I actually already mounted the box onto the car, and I already made all the connections. I connected my wiring harness onto the box, and then on the other end I connected the 8 auxiliaries onto the wiring harness. I also connected the signal or the cable that's going to be running from the box to the panel, and I also already ran my power and ground sources. In a second, we're going to take you over to the car and look at how it was done. Before we do that, now I'm going to discuss about the panel itself. So the panel, in the back of the panel comes 3 wires. One wire is for the signal, so it's the cable that goes from the box onto here, which will be connect that shortly once we mount this onto the car, which again in 1 second we'll be jumping onto the car and showing you guys how it was mounted. The other wire here is the GPS. Now if you want to install it, it's optional. It does come with it, so why not? Like I said, on here you can set a speed limit on the panel. So the other wire goes to the GPS, and then this last wire here hanging around with the O-ring, this goes to your ignition switch. So depending on what car you're using, if it's in a car, so in a Jeep, Bronco, or you know whatever car you're using, you're able to use run a fuse. So you look for your ACC or your ignition switch on your fuse box. That basically means the any fuse that will get power once the switch is on, and then you connect it onto the fuse. Of course, you put your 15 amp fuse or 5 amp fuse, whatever it was, on that fuse box, and then the other end you would connect onto your switch panel, or on the panel. Now on the car I'm working on, the Razor, it does have a ACC switch on the bus bar. One of the cool convenient things about the Pro Rs, Turbo Rs 2021 or 2020 and above, it already comes with the bus bar on there. I will be showing you guys where I refer to you in 1 second, but this cable is going to be connected onto the ignition. Now you do have a choice. You can put this straight onto your battery, but the only downside of putting this straight to your power source battery or whatnot is that this will always be running power. So if for some reason you forget to turn off your panel, over the time it can drain the battery. Now for some applications, for example on the pre-runner trucks, trophy trucks, sand rails, people use the panel to turn on the car as a source of ignition. So if you do want to do that, of course your car would have to have a battery kill switch, so that when you jump on the car, you turn on the battery, or you put the switch on, and then it will power your panel, and then you can use one of those switches as the ignition to turn on your car. So if you're doing it that way, just make sure you do have a battery kill switch. One of the last things you want is your car running out of battery, and then now you're in the desert or wherever you are and you're like, no battery. So for the purpose of this build I'm working on, this is gonna go into the ignition on the bus bar. And like I said, in a second we'll be jumping onto the vehicle and you'll be seeing how I ran the cable from the panel to the ignition and the bus bar of where it's located. So hang on tight, guys. We're about to jump onto the car and take a look at how the box was installed, how everything was connected, and of course how the panel would be connected onto the box, onto the ignition, and getting closer to finish installing our panel. Okay, so here we are on the car. Like I mentioned before, this Pro R, Turbo Rs and Pros do have this bus bar. Now in this bus bar, I'm able to use pigtails and connect it so I can get ground, power, and accessory. It also has a power that runs straight to the battery and the ground that runs straight to the battery. So actually that's where I've got the ground for the box and the power for the box. Here is the 8-point connector. On this side, I do have my 8 accessories already wired up. Like I mentioned earlier, I did, previous to the video, do my wiring harnesses and everything I needed to connect to this point. On the other end is the connector that that we built here on this video. Now, I did mention that on the panel there's 3 wires. One wire was for the AC switch. I actually ran it all the way to this point and I connected it onto one of these pigtails here. The other wire is right here. This is my signal, so this is what tells the box which accessories to be powered, and the other is the GPS box. I did connect it, and it's mounted in underneath this base that I have here. So now if we switch over, or we jump over to where we've mounted the panel, here is a panel. So now as I turn on the switch, we will get power. Nice. So now I can verify that all my accessories turn on and off. Once I've done so, we know that this box was successfully installed. Now I am able to close down this car and get it ready for off-roading.